All that way, your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before we fully dive into things, I would love to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already, that we get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, let's get into it, right? So, if you tuned in last week to the vlog, you know that I was working on various things, but also that I was going to have a birthday celebration. Well, unfortunately, that birthday celebration was over before it ever began. And, there's a lot of takeaway in that, and, a lot of life lessons, but let's sort of backtrack about what actually happened. So, for the weekend, essentially the birthday aspect of it was going to be on Saturday. So it was going to be like an all-day affair where we went to the Academy Museum, we went bowling, and then, we ended up at a bar for drinks, and, people can come to one, come to some, come to all, whatever they wanted to, right? It was pick and choose your own adventure sort of a thing. But I was going to obviously be at all three. Now, in order to do that, I needed to obviously have someone dog sit my foster Diamond, because, in theory, it would have been doable to, come back and forth, but that would have been just the most annoying thing in the world. And, for me, what I was really looking forward to on the weekend was to just kind of have some freedom of responsibility and just do what I essentially wanted to do. So what I had done was I had booked a dog sitter that I use, and have used a lot of times, that I trust. And, I was going to drop off Diamond, my foster, on Friday. And then I was going to, just have the rest of the day off, go to the movies, run some errands, stuff like that. Then have all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and I was going to pick her up, Monday. And that was going to be the game plan. Now, as I usually do, I notify like, hey, I'm about 30 minutes out, blah, blah, blah. And then I got to the place and I hadn't heard back. I wrote that I'm here. I rang the doorbell and I wasn't getting a response. So I was like, okay, that's strange. That doesn't normally happen. Maybe, maybe they're tied up. So, I essentially went to a park and just kind of, walked around with Diamond and stuff like that, just kind of eating out the clock, so to speak, and, kind of touching base and via text and being like, hey, is everything okay? Are you still good to like dog sit Diamond? I just wasn't hearing back. And, this is someone that, like I said, I trust. And so at that point, it's no longer a matter, like, it's not like they're trying to screw me over. It's more of a matter, they must have some sort of emergency, and I hope everything's okay. And so, and I was kind of like in this limbo because I didn't know, like, it could be a short thing, like, and something could be easily resolved, or, who knows, right? Like, you're in the midst of the unknown. And so kind of after about an hour, I was like, okay, I've waited enough. I'll go back home and, kind of just wait it out a little bit, see if I hear anything back. And a couple more hours went by and I hadn't heard anything back. So I was like, okay, well, at that point, so I usually book through Rover. And so at that point, I was already contacting Rover of like, hey, do you have contact to them? Like, do you know what's going on? Stuff like that. And they hadn't gotten a response, further confirming like this probably is something going on that's relatively serious. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. And, at that point I was like, okay, well, it's been a couple hours. Let me start by getting the refund for this. And as all these companies are kind of apt to do, it's, it's quite a process just to get the refund. They always try to, like, it's very easy to pay them, and for them to take out money, and even, whether or not it's the same amount, it's irrelevant to them. Not saying that they took out more, but, it's just funny how that sometimes works, in various capacities. But to get the refund, was a bit of a process, as it usually is with companies, because they want to hold on to your money. They don't want to give it back. So I was going through that while trying to figure, things out. And of course, like, the option exists, like, okay, hey, I can find another dog sitter and stuff like that. But because there's, for me, I'm very selective with, like, I don't have another, like, plan B, particularly of, okay, if, this person is unavailable, then I can just call this person, right? And, in order to have a good dog sitter, I would have needed to, check them out and stuff like that, and that would have taken up more time. And it could have been somebody that I booked for the rest of the weekend, but I certainly needed somebody for Saturday. And just the way things were going, it was just taking up so much time. It was exhausting. And, the whole point of my weekend was, or at least that I wanted, was to have it be stress-free. Really that was, like, the point of it all, where I didn't want to have to get up early, on Saturday to walk the dog. I didn't want to have to, I just wanted to be stress-free and have as little responsibility as possible. And, already just finding a dog sitter at this point was not challenging, but certainly annoying, right? And it got to a point where I was like, this just isn't worth it for me. Like, I'd rather just, scrap it and, call it, because it just really was, the salvage for me wasn't, okay, can I make Saturday work? The salvage for me was to have it be as stress-free as possible, okay? And I think that's what, a couple of my friends were like, hey, this is, and I'm like, listen, I've already spent the amount of time I've spent on this on Friday. It has already been hours, right? And it's been annoying, and I've got no answers and this and that. And so unless you actually have a solution besides, like, oh, it'll work out, or, like, just find another dog sitter, it's like, that's not very, like, what do you think I'm trying to do? And yeah, so to me, it just became easier to cancel everything and just have it be that way, as opposed to anything else. And, you could say, like, okay, I could have kept at least one of the things, the bar being the most obvious, because people were going to go to that, most people were going to go to that. But for me, it was like, that was the least interesting part. And it really was designed as a whole. And like I said, it was supposed to be stress-free. Not that, like, I could certainly leave Diamond alone, for a few hours and go to the bar, right? Like, that wouldn't have been a problem. But just, I was just so disinterested in that, like, that I had a different vision and I was disinterested in that. And, it may come off as petty in that way, but, Byron Katie in an interview was asked, what is your job? And, thinking, the interviewer thinking that she would say to heal people or whatever other sort of purposeful thing that one might, consider as a job, especially if they're, earning money by helping people, right? But she actually said to be happy, not threw off the interview, or like, to be happy, right? And she really views that as her job. And it really is, all of our jobs is to make ourselves happy. And so, it was something in that moment that I was reminded of, like, yeah, my job is to make myself happy. And this has already been the opposite of stress-free. I know I'm not going to enjoy just being at the bar and stuff like that. I don't want to be just doing it just to do it, just to appease people. So I was like, it's just all canceled. And I'd rather just hang out, work on my script, take Diamond on a hike and, make the best of it. And that's what I did, And on Sunday, or Saturday, as I was like, hey, you know what? If anybody wants to join me for a movie, I'm going to go see this movie and then go to a local bookstore, which might not sound like exciting stuff to others, but that was my form of, you know what? This is like what I would like to do. I'm going to enjoy myself. And if you want to join me, up to you, right? And, not surprising, not many takers on that. But yeah, I think in many ways we do fall into this trap where we try to appease others as opposed to ourselves, and so forth. And yes, would I have loved to see everybody and hang out with people that I haven't seen in a while, or even if they're close friends that I do get to see, like, it's just, great to share those memories. And that side of it is unfortunate, but, at the end of the day, I can't be mad at, what happened. There's no, it's not like the dog sitter planned this and was out to, like, mess things up for me. They were genuine, and we've talked since, and, they were very apologetic and things of that nature. And, they certainly feel very sorry. And I'm like, what's the point, right? Like, A, it's not their fault. And B, what is me being mad at them? Like, I think we try to too often have a source of, something at fault or something to blame. But for what? What is that going to accomplish, And so that's why for me, I just made the switch of, well, what's going to make me happy? Right? And, I think there's a big lesson in that in general is, I think we try to appease many people a lot. And I think, don't get me wrong, there's a side where we should be there for people and be helpful and stuff like that. And I certainly find joy in doing such things. But this, it got to a place where, like, if I move forward with this, it's just going to be an obligation, right? And I don't know. When you think about happiness, there's this side of it that can be considered where you're just abdicating responsibility and you're shutting yourself off to the horrors of the world, right? If we're going to extend this out to a larger context. And certainly that can be viewed that way, but I also say, I think if more people did focus on being happy as their primary job, there would be a lot less conflict in the world, And I mean true happiness happiness in the full embodiment of spirituality and enlightenment where you exude love. I'm not talking about a bastardized form of happiness that brings pain and suffering onto others. I mean one that is inherently aligned with our true selves, that doesn't compete with others' ability to be happy. I really do believe that. And I know it sounds very out there and, sort of distance from perhaps reality and, nice in theory, but what the hell does that mean in practice? But there are practical steps to get to that. I mean, certainly therapy and, the search for meaning in life and reading nonfiction books and, stuff like that, and just wanting to learn is a step forward towards that, right? So, yeah, I think there's just a way forward, and, ultimately people will understand. I don't think in the end anyone's upset for me having canceled anything. If they are, it's unfortunate, but I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, people can think what they think, but, I'll still be there for them and we'll still be friends and things like that. But if you want to be mad at me, when, I think sometimes people do just, in their best of ways, try to be helpful, but it's like, unfortunately, it's not helpful, right? And, So yeah, it was over before it began, but that's okay. I still enjoyed it, and it was what it was. And there again, talk about like not helpful things. When someone calls you of like, hey, this dog's really kind of ruin your life and stuff like that, and I'm like, it's not ruining my life. It's just, this dog is my responsibility. My intent is still to find Diamond the best forever home. It's just taking longer. That is the case. We're basically at 4 months together, and what am I gonna do, right? Like, I am its caretaker, and I can't just say F it, right? It's also another reason why I'm not just gonna put her in any random place, that I haven't myself vetted, because I don't want to set her back, and just throw her in a kennel and she'll just be there and so forth. Like, if she's gonna be taken care of by anyone, I want it to be by a person that I trust, by a place that I can stand behind and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's just kind of the way it is. On the plus side of things, on Sunday, I did go to this bookstore that I discovered, and apparently it's a really cool bookstore that a lot of people love. It's called Open Book. It's in Woodland Hills. It basically only applies if you live in LA specifically. But, if you do, I recommend it. Check it out. I guess the greater point is, visit your local libraries. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff that they do, that they have, and sometimes, a lot of times, like, the books that they have are so vast and great, and they're used copies, so you can get them for cheaper, and I really love that. I appreciate that. So I went with a friend, and, we kind of spent just time searching through bookstores. Like, I usually only go through bookstores by myself, but it was great to have, another person and, be like, hey, have you ever read this author, or, you ever heard of this book, and blah, 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 and just kind of, picking and choosing. And I got some books from them of like, hey, you need to read this. And, I saw some books that I'd read that I really enjoyed, and I put it on their pile. And yeah, that is my idea of fun. That is my idea of being happy. So, yeah. All right. So shifting gears away from the birthday aspect of all of this, I'm happy to share that with my forthcoming movie, The Arbiters, which is an animated feature film in the style of like Hayao Miyazaki, I, along with my team, right? I mean, it's primarily my team. I do the easy part of this. We have completed all the main character sketches, right? That's a big milestone, because we've been doing this since December of 2022, right? So it's been quite the journey to get from that stage to now this. And it's not just like, I mean, as far as like when I say main character designs, I mean, not just, the protagonist and the antagonist. I'm talking about all the side characters as well that have significant roles. So we're talking 14 character sketches. And the process for us was, okay, I had, created these little descriptions of what I was going for. But I pulled images from the internet as reference points, and even tried to do some iterations through Midjourney just to give them an idea. And then I would send it to them. They would come up with some pencil sketches. Then I would send feedback on that. Then they would, revise it, add color to it, send it back. I would take that and, give them more notes. And then we got to a final design. Now, final being the sort of false term in that, because of course they're not final. Everything's apt to change. I mean, when I say that we started this in December of 2022, that's still at a phase where I barely had an outline for the entire project. There was no even first draft of the script. So through this process, as we got to the later characters, I had a better idea of the look and feel of them because the story was more fleshed out. But it was kind of symbiotic because the more character design sketches I had, at least, however rough, then I could look at that and it gave me an idea. I could visualize that person and I could see them within the scenes and have a better idea of how they would react, therefore elevating the plot and so forth. So, it all elevates each other. And, now that I'm coming to the second draft of the script near completion, we're essentially, now that we've done all these character sketches, what we're going to do is, right now we're on pause with any animation. Once I have the second draft of the script done, then we're all going to, look at everything. They're going to read the script, and then we're going to reassess the character designs and the best way to proceed forward from there. So that's very exciting. I look forward to that, right? And, obviously the script will have changes inevitably, but what I'm sort of honing in on is what are the things that are locked in, that no matter what changes with the script, this is what we're going to have. And certainly the main characters themselves, these are the characters, right? They may change in appearance and stuff like that, but an overall, their essence, this is who they're going to be. There's certain locations of this is one that's locked in. No matter what happens, this will be in the script. So we can start to do some of that, right? Now, taking a step back, if we want to track the progress of my script writing, so, each week I kind of give you a benchmark. And so right now I'm on bullet point number 90. I just completed 91, so I'm on bullet point 92. And there's 117 bullet points in the outline. As I mentioned as a caveat, each week, not all bullet points are weighted equally. Some can amount to half a page, others are 7 pages long, right? So, and the hard ones are, not that the hard ones are only in the back half, of what's coming up, but, the ending of the movie is the stuff that I've spent the least time really polishing, because, any pass at an outline, a script, I'm always starting at the beginning, right? And working my way there. And then usually I'll get to a place where it's just okay, the wheels have come off, so let me go back to the beginning and strengthen. So I'm excited to finesse the ending. And, even though it may take longer than what's preceded it, it's okay. We're at the final stages, and it's exciting, and it is a little bit I try not to think of what's ahead, because it can be daunting I got to write the climax, this is where everything's got to come together. And there's still, right now, I'm in the midst of writing a battle scene that takes the characters then to their new location when they really solidify, the final confrontation, let's say, and so forth. If you knew the story and you could be in my head, you'd know all the stuff still left to do, right? So even though we're on 92 of 117, that chunk, what's left, very significant chunk, right? As you hope every single bit of it is, right? That's the ideal, is that, a story, whether in written form or visual form, never drags. But yeah, it's, we've got a lot left still, and, but it's exciting, it's exciting to be approaching that finish line and doing it in a way that, that I feel the script is relatively strong. Not to say that there's not changes and so forth. And I'm, but it's for me, I have to kind of keep going through it, commit to, this was the intent. Let's just see essentially test this idea, right? So let's get to the finish line and then go back to my collaborators and let's see what we come up with, right? And let them decide of like, okay, hey, I know you were going for this. I don't think this works as strongly. I think you could take this out. I think you can elevate this by doing X, Y, and Z. All that fun stuff, right? So that's exciting, So I'll keep you updated on that. In the ideal world, I would just, at the pace that I've been going, you would think that by next week I would be done with it. We'll see. As I said, that not all things are weighted equally, and I am, as I'm writing this, there's ideas that still come to mind that I sort of jot down, and it wouldn't like reshift the narrative too much. But what I would like to do is, I think they're easy enough notes where I finish this pass and then I could go back in real quick and essentially do a revision of the script to fix those elements, right? So that's kind of how I'm approaching it, and then I'll send it to, my team. Just as a fun thing, one of the things as I take my daily walks with Diamond the pup is, just kind of thinking about things. And, one of the things I really love is the Animatrix, right? Well, I love anything in the Matrix, but the Animatrix specifically is a series of short films that helps round out the world of the Matrix. And they're done in different styles and, they tell different stories. But in particular, there's one called The Second Renaissance, which is told in 2 parts. And it's basically a history of the world of the Matrix, right? And it's a fun, mini 2-part documentary. I mean, each episode of that is about 10 minutes, so a 20-minute total. And, I think there's moments and aspects to my story that is applicable, right? Doing certain things as news reports, doing certain things as mini documentaries. There's an aspect of where the world's memories are preserved, let's say, and so the idea of a second renaissance feels similar to how I can approach it, where the world's memories from beginning to end, or at least current time, is shared. And I think those are aspects that can be utilized for the Arbiters, which would be very exciting, But again, right now it's just all ideas in my head. The main thing is getting the script done because and polished, right? Not just done, but really in a good place, because without that as the source material, all this other stuff is meaningless. All right, shifting gears, I do want to talk about, I had finally published my first Substack newsletter this past week. You can check it out at philsvitek.substack.com. And, in many ways, I could, in thinking about it, there's a very easy way to break it up where it's a weekly newsletter instead of a monthly newsletter. And then the reason I say that is because it features 11 mini articles from creative challenges, artist highlights, tools that artists can utilize, sort of looking at the industry as a whole, or various aspects of it. It's got some movie recommendations and things like that. So it's got a lot in there, and I plan to do it every single month. So we'll see how it kind of evolves and stuff like that. But, my goal was, it just felt easier to do a once a monthly thing as opposed to, once a week thing. But because it was once a month, I wanted to make sure I had as much bang for your buck as possible. So that's why, there's 11 things in there. And that just feels right. I'm very proud of it. It's obviously something new for me. But I do like writing, obviously sharing information. And so it's enjoyable to write and literally write in a different medium, or post something in a different medium, in this case, the written word versus, speaking like this. So that's exciting. Check that out. If you're curious, as I said, it's going to be once a month, and it's something that I'm looking forward to. And I did a video a while ago on why I think Substack is a viable just sort of outlet for artists, and they should sort of look at it, because I think a lot of people do have their newsletters through MailChimp or Constant Contact, but I think Substack is becoming superior. And even if you don't have a newsletter, like, I was talking with my friend who's a film critic. I said, you write up your entire speech essentially before you videotape yourself. Why not put those up in written form? Like, you already have it, so put it up as a Substack newsletter, and I think, you'll get a different audience than just your video stuff. So, yeah, very exciting. Speaking of just things in general, while we're talking about the administrative stuff, coming up on November 17th, I'll be doing my monthly group coaching session through Patreon. So patreon.com/Svitek. One of the perks is that, each month we do a group coaching session. It's a lot of fun, and it's only $10 a month, right? So there's only one tier, right? So everyone gets the same thing. This is one of the perks. The other perks are like behind the scenes stuff. Like, I talked about the Arbiters and the character sketches. Well, you can actually view those, and you can kind of track that journey a little bit more through my Patreon. So feel free to check that out. Okay. Let's talk about my coaching aspect of, life. So not my projects, but others' project. And if you'll remember last week, I shared that I was helping a friend with their documentary. They've been working on this for a while, and they were trying to get over the finish line. And so what I had said to them, like, hey, I can help you, but it'll be easier just to show you rather than just tell you, right? In terms of what I think needs to be changed to elevate it, right? Because it's a nebulous thing to wrap your head around. And some, even for me, like, to write out the notes, to have them make any sense and be actionable would have taken way longer than to just do them. And that's what I kind of said at the end of last week's vlog was, I'm going to take their final output, the video file, the single video file that's got everything married to it, and I'm just going to do a very crude recut of it to illustrate exactly what I would do, as a starting position. It was never my intent to like take this and, get it all the way across the finish line. Part of it because, again, I was working off of a single video file. And if you know video editing, it's like, it doesn't give me that much room to work with, right? Like, if I need to change out a shot, I can't change out a shot. If I cut from one segment to another and, there's music underneath both elements, now it's going to be a little bit jarring, right? But the idea was to lay out the groundwork. And so I had made it a point to do that. And so I set aside time and I was like, okay, I'm going to stick to 2 hours and see where the hell I get. Well, 2 hours go by and I'm not quite done, but I know I'm not that far off. So I'm like, okay, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, like, let me just get this across the finish line. So in slightly less than 3 hours, I had taken their 2 hour cut, reshuffled scenes that created, in my opinion, a better narrative flow. I took out stuff that I felt dragged, that I felt was unneeded, that took away from what they were trying to tell. And if you remember last time, one of the main things I talked about was this idea that I was asking them questions. I wanted to know, what is the movie they were trying to make, right? So this wasn't an edit that was self-serving to me of like, oh, well, I think this is how the movie should be. No, it was, what are you trying to achieve? Okay, cool. Based off of that, I can take what you've already created and make this, right? And the aspect of it for me, there's a couple of key takeaways. Number one, the 3 hours, I'm not being paid to do this. I didn't want to be paid to do this, but it is, I like these sort of exercises because it keeps me sharp, right? It gives me a chance to kind of look at something of like, how would I elevate it, right? So it's a creative challenge. The second aspect of it is, it's essentially my donation. Like, instead of giving money to the movie, this is a huge way that I can contribute. And I think I'm able to do that, right, because of the years of experience that I have. And I think we underestimate practitioners. Meaning, there's a lot of people that I respect and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to coaches and teachers, I'd always rather gravitate towards the knowledge of someone actually walking the walk. So I'd much rather listen to someone talk about filmmaking that's done it, a la Christopher Nolan or Robert Rodriguez, Wong Kar-wai, versus a film critic, let's say, right? Because one doesn't have the experience with it. And that's why it's easy for me to get in something like, I'll toot my own horn, and I will, like, not a lot of people, I'm sure, could do that. Like, they might know that the movie needs changes, and they might know that on a sort of overall level what should happen in order to change it, but they wouldn't know all the specifics. That comes from a practitioner's experience. And I've been in a lot of those situations where, it's come off sometimes in an arrogant where I'm like, I think this can be better. I've said it to, and I remember there was a big sort of project with like a major company, and they've something that they've been developing for years and whatnot. And I was like, okay, I really appreciate what you guys did. I think I can elevate it. I think I can get it across the finish line. And that's a big thing that I try to, tell people. Like, what I told my friend in particular was, listen, what you did, right, allowed me to be able to reshuffle this. So I'm not coming in as this like hero all of a sudden, and that like no one could have done this. You could have done this. It just would have taken you longer. You just couldn't separate the forest from the trees. And the reason why it took me less than 3 hours was because there was a very strong foundation overall. It just needed cleaning up, right? And I think oftentimes when we talk about others, like some people sort of bastardize the process where like them as a coach or something like that will feel all high and mighty, like that it's like that side of it really is the easier side. It's the doing, right? It's the stuff that my friend did for years and years to get to that point that is the real work of it. And for me to come in 3 hours, like, it all works because of the work that they put in. I can apply my skill set and my knowledge to that to help them along. And for, let's just say 3 hours. For 3 hours worth of my time, it's astronomical in terms of input versus output, right? This will help them tremendously for, yes, it's 3 hours of my time, but relatively low in terms of investment versus what the outcome of it will all be. And, I could have very easily not done that and been like, okay, just whatever, gave my opinion and walked away. But it is something that, for me was easy to do because, and so I was like, okay, well, let me just do it. And I think too oftentimes as I said, we sort of get caught up in this idea that we have to like just focus on ourselves. And I think we need to be part of that community, that artistic community. How can we expect others to help us if we're not going to be there for other people? And, you know, yes, some people might argue that I'd be further along if I didn't. But to me, again, I'm able to do the things that I do because I also do these things. Like, one informs the other. They're not singular to me. They're all part of a greater whole. And so, getting to work on that, yeah, it's a creative exercise and it works a different muscle and that I haven't been utilizing in a little bit, or but it's just something different, right? And again, for that small amount of time, for that small amount of effort, what it does for this movie and to help my friend is astronomical, right? You want that. It's like investing. Low risk, high reward. That's what you want, not high risk, high reward, as they say. That's bullshit. You want low risk, high reward. That's what you ultimately want to do. But it was an exciting project to work on, and it was validating that one of their friends, saw both versions and they were like, "This one's good," meaning mine. I only worked on it for 3 hours, so it's not like I'm like saying, "Hey, here's the final movie." It is a starting point, and I think that'll be the hard aspect of it, and be a very interesting thing to observe is, to what level my friend is willing to, really just nose to the grindstone, get this to a place that's like, okay, this is sharp, this is top notch. Especially if the goal is to, sell it to a streamer like a Hulu, Netflix, or whatever. It's going to really have to sing. You're going to have to, for that type of stuff, you have to give them every reason not to say no. So we'll see. But I can feel good about my participation. It's like, whatever happens at this point, it's like I did what I could. I tried to help in the best way, and, the rest is up to them. So we shall see. Switching gears yet again. I've talked about in indirect ways about my foster diamond. By the way, I've linked to her information if you or somebody is interested in her. But last week I took her to her first Obedience 2 class. So she had graduated Obedience 1, and now we were in Obedience 2. And that was exciting, because it does mark progress. And, I've certainly seen her be better within the Obedience 1 class over time, but to essentially graduate and move on to a next level. And now her, we so far we've done 2 Obedience 2 classes, and, even from one to the other, there's progress, and she's becoming a lot more obedient, as the title implies. And the other aspect, now that we've graduated Obedience 1, that opens us up for other classes as well. The other one being Agility, right? So she's never done Agility, but we did our first Agility class, and at first, she didn't know all the things. You got tunnels, you got tires you got to jump through, you've got sort of what I call the horse barriers that you're jumping. It's all kinds of different stuff. And man, by the third time, she was looking like a pro. Not in the sense that she could be timed, and that she would be amazing, but there was such a confidence to her going from the A-frame to the tire to the jump through the tunnel, she was really enjoying herself. And that was wonderful to see, And so, yeah, even though the intent is still to find her forever home, part of all this is to make her more adaptable, but it's also, why wouldn't I want that? While she's in my care, I want her to enjoy herself, and to be full of confidence and and stuff like that. And so these obedience classes and now this agility class and everything that we've been trying to do, brings her out of her shell, makes her more used to the world. That way she's not reactive or scared. And I'm really proud of her. She's really coming a long way. And it does take time, right? As I said at the top, she's been with me for about 4 months. And, I think we have to understand that. These are living creatures. They're like kids. You don't just expect a kid to come out of the womb all of a sudden knowing everything. You got to teach them, right? And no different with this. But the fact that, she's a stray, her history is not unknown. And the fact that she's as sweet as she is and able to do all the things that she's able to do, she really wants to work. And she really wants to please. That's what gives her joy. And when you can make that fun, such as an agility class, she's in heaven. So that's been fun to see. So yeah, that's kind of the week in a nutshell overall. Lots of stuff going on. Hope this kind of gave you stuff to think about, stuff to help you out. As always, you're welcome to comment down below. Ask any questions, give any opinions. And it could be about any of the stuff that I've talked about, or anything that you would like me to talk about in the future. I would love to, dive in whatever you'd like to talk about. Thank you, as always. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.